The game dev industry is most definitely one of the hardest to get into. The requirements wanted from juniors are escalating with every year and in some cases are simply impossible to be met. People were wondering if you need an education to get a job or if you can simply make games on your own and get one with that experience. With that amount of unclarity, it is very easy to get lost and demotivated, but fear not, it isn't as complicated as it may seem. There are many things that you can do to improve your chances of landing a job in the game industry, and in this video I'm going to share some of the tips that I wish I knew back then when I was first applying for my first job. But first, for context, my name is Vitan and I'm a professional game designer, and more specifically, technical game designer. I've been doing game design for about 5 years now, 4 of which I spent studying game architecture and design at Bradley University, and after a successful internship during my final year, I managed to land my first game dev position as a technical game designer in Infinity Labs. With my education aside, I learned most of what I know through the internet, and by simply making games on my own. I will divide this video in a couple of sections, each highlighting a step towards getting a position at a games company as a developer, starting with number 1, gathering game development experience. Experience is the most valuable asset when applying for a game dev position. It shows how experienced you are with dealing with different problems during the development period. Like being able to say how long a task will take to be completed, or being able to work in multidisciplinary teams with other programmers, designers, and artists. It also shows how good you are at what you do, like designing gameplay mechanics, programming complex systems, or modeling detailed characters. All of these things fall under the experience tab, and the better you are at them, the higher your chances are to get hired. So how do you get this experience? Well, if you look online, there's usually 2 ways. 1 is go to university, or 2, simply prepare yourself alone. As I mentioned earlier, I picked the university path and honestly haven't regretted it ever since. The university environment helps you grow so much, as from day 1 you get to work with other disciplines, making short games, all up until your final years where you make small AAA-like titles. You also get a lot of experience working in game engines like Unreal and Unity, and other software like Maya and Houdini that AAA game developers use on a daily basis. At the end, when you graduate, you have a couple of games to show alongside with a ton of soft skills, proving that you're fit for an entry-level position at a company. But what if you cannot or simply don't want to do a game development education? Well, then game jams are your next best friend. Game jams prove that you can make a game from start to finish and recognize what is important for a game by limiting your time to overscope your project. Joining jams and making games with your community is another great way to gather multidisciplinary experience and practice for when you get to make the bigger games. Now, you may think that just because most game jams are very janky and usually not fun, that would mean that companies won't value them as experience. But I've seen a lot of recruiters mention game jams as a very valuable part from your portfolio, as it shows that you're proactive to learn, try new things, and simply give yourself a challenge. Also, by doing many jams, you will get better at them, learning what makes a game fun, even with just a few mechanics, which is a very essential skill to have. Another great way to gather experience is through courses and tutorials. There are a ton of courses online that you can take that will result being way cheaper than a game dev education and will teach you a ton of great skills. I personally taught myself Unreal through following YouTube tutorials and a couple of courses, so you can do that too. Alright, you've gathered your experience, you're fit for an entry position, what do you do next? Well, since you need to show your work somehow, you're gonna need a portfolio. Portfolio is a pretty broad word in the game dev space, as it can mean a lot of things, but it all leads to the same result. Showcase what you have done and what your process was creating that thing. This is how recruiters will know about your approach when making games and if that approach is fitting for their company.
Wow, that is delicious. Finally, some good fucking food. Wow.
How do you like this?
Yeah, it's delicious. Well done.
General rule of thumb is to keep in mind that they only have a couple of minutes to look at your application and portfolio, therefore try highlighting your best work and formatting it short and concise. And also make it work for mobile. I happened to ask in a Discord server once for portfolio feedback and got absolutely roasted about my mobile layout, so trust me, you don't want to endure that. So, you have a portfolio, how do you apply? When I was first looking for internship, I thought the best way to do it was to contact companies through their emails. I spent months researching companies, crafting CVs and custom cover letters, only to have very little success getting in touch with them. And no, this wasn't just because I was bad and they were better candidates. The reason is completely different. Trust me, I'm not coping. It turned out that most people find more success by talking with recruiters on sites like LinkedIn or any other professional contact that they have with them. Now, this doesn't mean stalking them on Discord or writing them on some kind of other site. You need to be very careful about how you're approaching them. It never hurts to send them a little message asking if they're looking for people like you, because it's gonna surprise you that a lot of companies actually look for more people than they say on their websites. Another great way to get in touch with recruiters is through going to networking events. Small talk during these events can result in potential interview, so check sites like Meetup for such events in the future, or simply visit a game dev convention like Gamescom. And that's it. These are the general tips that I wish you knew back then when I was first applying for my first job. I hope you guys learned something new or found some of these useful. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I will try to answer the ones that I'm confident that I can answer, because at the end of the day, I'm also new to this and I don't know everything. Keep in mind, these are just tips, nothing here is for certain. You should not be listening to people on the internet. You should know what is best for you. So go out there, make some games, and have fun.